Bill Clinton. They went to Bill Clinton, and Bill Clinton said arrest him. He was so concerned that his brother be put on the straight and narrow.
But he also did help. It's true what you're saying, of course. He did help to bring him up. He was the older brother, and he really was almost the father to him.
Jeff Greenfield, the last time we heard from you a couple of hours ago, you had just begun to absorb the president's inauguration speech and hold forth in your usual eloquent manner. What do you think now that you've had a couple of hours to think about this morning?
I think it's also clear, apart from the obvious Kennedy-esque notions, that he is looking for a way to reach a constituency whose hopes he raised and to tell him, at least today, he has not forgotten them. Part of the speech was crafted in response to the criticism, I believe, that developed during the transition that Clinton was already backing away from his campaign promises. So all of his talk to the American people about you forced the season on us is a way to say I've heard you. The other thing that occurs to me is how much Ross Perot had to do with the drafting of this speech. Obviously, he didn't write it, but when Clinton was saying we've got to get power and influence off the backs of the people, give the capital back to the people, H. Ross Perot was in a sense over Bill Clinton's shoulder while he was speaking. Peter?
Thanks very much, Jeff. We'll be back in a moment to see, as you can see, the parade crowd gets deeper and wider as they come down off Capitol Hill and move along Pennsylvania Avenue, the main street of Washington, so named for Pennsylvania after the state of Pennsylvania lost its bid to have the nation's capital located in Pennsylvania. It has the honor of a street which David Brinkley points out on a regular basis is not quite as straight as it should be, thanks to the Treasury, right, David?
Well, thanks to Andrew Jackson.
True.
It's supposed to be a straight line in the L'Enfant plan from the Capitol to the White House. But Jackson insisted on putting a Treasury building on a corner which required the avenue to jog around it. And you will have seen before, no doubt, turns made necessary by Andrew Jackson's bullheaders.
In a moment will come the first of the floats and the bands and the individuals and the donkeys, etc. from 50 states. We'll be right back. In 1913, this is what Pennsylvania Avenue would have looked like. And this is what it looks like today. You have to do it once more, if you wouldn't mind, Roger Goodman, our director, in order to fully appreciate from 1913 to 1993. In 80 years, this is what has become of Pennsylvania Avenue. And as David Brinkley was pointing out this morning, it was for a long period of time, several years ago, a real mess, a real grungy street, David, and then they began to fix it up.
Yeah, it filled up with novelty stores, souvenir stores, selling T-shirts with funny sayings on them, and fireworks, that kind of junk. And John Kennedy was disgusted with it. And he formed a committee to study it and then to do something about it, and Congress put up the money, and a lot of private money was spent. And it's now, it's not perfect by any means, but it's a whole lot better looking than it was.
Now, if we can stay with that picture for a moment, this suggests to me something. This suggests to me that President Clinton or somebody in this joint inaugural committee has prevailed on the Secret Service, because the Secret Service was, for one thing, going to go to the Willard Hotel, which isn't very far from that spot, and nail shut all the windows that fronted on Pennsylvania Avenue. And the operators of all the other buildings along the parade route had been warned not to use balconies or rooftops during the parade. We all know there are Secret Service agents and sharpshooters all over those roofs, but it is really nice to see the public there as well.
Some of those buildings are new. I think those two have apartments in them. People live in them.
I don't think it'll make much difference to the Secret Service if they wanted your window closed.
Well, in that car the president is in, you'd need some kind of cannon to do him in harm.
Can I ask you a piece of strange trivia?
Of course.
Okay, I hear that during the Civil War, the area around the Treasury in Pennsylvania Avenue was a red light district, and the ladies of the evening were put in a separate section by a man named Fighting Joe Hooker, who was the general at the time, and that is why to this day ladies of the evenings are sometimes called hookers. Is that true?
Well, you asked David Brinkley that. If I may interrupt just a bit, I have a better Brinkley to answer this question. We haven't had a chance yet this afternoon to introduce our other resident historian from Columbia University. I get a picture of him, Alan Brinkley, David's son.
What do you know about hookers?
Well, what a way to start,
Very
Alan.
little.
Alan, welcome to our broadcast. It was so nice to have you this morning. This is David Brinkley's son. Alan, who has been at Columbia University in New York since 1991. Henry Graff, his partner in crime upstairs, has been there since 1946. Alan, what are your impressions about today, and can you answer Barbara's question?
I can't answer Barbara's question, so I'll move quickly on to my impressions of today. I think one of the things that's impressed me the most today is the sense of generational change, and Clinton, of course, alluded to that several times in his address. We're at a point where, after 32 years, a generation has, in a sense, passed from the scene, at least in terms of national leadership. All the presidents, from John Kennedy to George Bush, were born in about the same 10-year period. And now here comes Bill Clinton, who is, I think, 22 years younger than George Bush. I think that's the biggest gap, that may be the biggest gap in our history.
Let me interrupt you for just a second, Alan. He has a microphone in his hand. I suspect he's able to say hello to the crowd from inside that car. Alan, please continue.
I'm sorry. I think for a lot of people of Clinton's generation, my generation, which is the 60s generation, the baby boom generation, the Vietnam generation, there's a real sense today of sort of having arrived, and so here we are. And I think for people of that generation, there's a lot of excitement and also probably some uneasiness at that thought.
And a little fatigue, I might add.
No excitement there.
Alan, as you've been looking at this all day today and listening to the speeches, look back a little and tell us what other inaugurals you think Clinton has used to make up his, because this is all meant to represent his public personality, isn't it?
Well, it clearly is, and he said that in reading inaugural addresses, he was most impressed, as I think someone said earlier in the broadcast, by Lincoln, by Wilson, by Roosevelt, and by Kennedy. There was obviously a lot of Kennedy here. There was something of Roosevelt, too, the sense that there's a crisis and that he's responding to it, the specificity about at least his goals, if not any concrete details. And there was something of Wilson as well. Wilson talked about the positive uses of government, bringing government into the arena of the economy and other things in a way that it had not been before, and Clinton made similar references today in his speech. So I think all of those speeches that he admired obviously played a role in his own address. As far as the ceremony goes, presidents don't have very much control over the ceremony. I think the Andrew Jackson inaugural obviously played some role in his thinking. Yes, he's having an open house tomorrow, as Bush did. But also as Andrew Jackson did.
And the other thing, of course, is that if you look at the inauguration in its extended form, the bus ride from Monticello, David Brinkley, is a reflection of the Jefferson inauguration 1801.
He came as close as he could to following Jefferson's route from Monticello to Washington. Most of it he couldn't use because they're muddy little roads full of curves and going through the woods, and he couldn't go through them on those big buses they had. So they did the best they could and came somewhat close.
You know, I'm sorry.
Please, Ron.
I was just going to say that Professor Brinkley talked about the difference in age between George Bush and Bill Clinton. I think there are many people who might think that Bill Clinton is our youngest president. He is not. He's 46. Our youngest was Teddy Roosevelt at 42. Our oldest was, we all know this, our oldest was Ronald Reagan at 69. Hillary Clinton, by the way, is 45, and now that I've reeled off all those numbers, I can forget them.
No, you can't, because I want to know who was the youngest First Lady.
I'm back to her.
Back to research, guys.
Back to the research card.
Well, see what happens when you start this kind of thing. In all of our hotel rooms in Washington this week, those of us who stay in hotels, unlike David Brinkley, there have been these wonderful books of trivia and first facts. There's a whole industry of memorabilia that grows up around such occasions. I was thinking when the first crystal bowl was presented to President Clinton, of one of my best pieces of memorabilia now is a plate from the wedding of Prince Charles
which we did together.
and Diana, which Barbara, you and I did together.
By the way, that crystal Lenox is the best American crystal in China, and that's what Nancy Reagan was so criticized for. Remember when she ordered all of the china for the White House? By the way, I may not know the youngest, however, we were talking about this earlier. The first woman to ride in an inaugural parade was Helen Taft. When Theodore Roosevelt went right to the railroad station and said, I'm not going to ride back in this parade, I'm finished with all of this, the new President Taft's wife said, well, I'll go. And she became the first woman, and ever since, the wife has been a part of the inaugural parade. So Here's to Helen Taft. 1909, that was.
They rode in those days, of course, as you can
Taft.
see, in an open carriage.
Taft, while he was president, gained 25 pounds. And as you see in that picture, he didn't need it.
He didn't jog either. This isn't going to happen to Bill Clinton. I wonder if he'll still jog now.
Well, he jogged up Pennsylvania Avenue yesterday.
But he wasn't president. You know, every president always says in recent years, I'm going to get out and around. George Bush said, I'm going to go visit people. I'm going to go to... They don't do it.
Can't.
But this, I think, presents a more challenging problem for the Clintons than perhaps for others. You have the enormous sense, particularly the other night listening to their interview with Diane Sawyer, of how they value their privacy. And when she asked what would worry them most, it was this ability to keep contact with his family, to be able to do the things he wants, like jog, to be able to go out and pick up a cup of coffee somewhere. There's no doubt that he risks losing some of his charm for some of the voters if he finds himself locked behind the gates of the White House.
And you know, when you talk about privacy, a lot of us were thinking about Chelsea in a very sympathetic way. This is a child who's going to have her whole adolescence in front of us.
It's terrible.
And if he has another term, she will be 21. I mean, when do you have your first kiss with the Secret Service men? I'm being very serious about this. We're going to see her go from perhaps 12 years old to young womanhood in front of all of our eyes. It's very tough for a child.
Well, you mentioned 21. We're still checking. Nancy Gerbiner, who's our research producer here, is still checking. But she does tell me that Frances Folsom was 21 years old when she married then-President Grover Cleveland in 1886.
That's right. She was his ward. And she was married in the White House, right? I think in the Red Room. Well, whatever. We're fudging the red or the blue room. I wasn't there at the time. But she was his ward, and it was rather shocking at the time that he married this very young and beautiful woman.
Now, while we watch this parade, the whole transition in government is occurring, and nowhere is that more evident for us at the moment than it is over at the Pentagon. It is true that the Secretary of Defense is going to be Secretary of Defense, Dick Cheney, for about another 50 minutes, but over at the Pentagon, John McBethy, you can tell us about the changes.
Some of the changes that are underway, Peter, they have already taken down Dick Cheney's nameplate from the Pentagon. Workmen have very quietly stuck up Les Aspen's new name outside the door. And while the inaugural speech was on, they were shampooing the carpets inside his office. Those are the sort of silent things that happen. The military, meanwhile, has been standing by and monitoring very carefully what's going on around the world. Another little drama is about to unfold up on the Capitol, where the Senate is going to vote to confirm Les Aspen. He will be taken into a back room immediately after that, and he will be sworn in by a man named Doc Cook, a 72-year-old gentleman who is the senior civil servant here in the Pentagon.
Thanks very much, John. Les Aspen, who is the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, a man who Governor Clinton believes is going to be precisely the right Secretary of Defense for him, for a new world order and a military which, by financial definition and mission definition, is going to change. The Cold War has given way to the disorder of the New World Order, and Les Aspen, who has had a long political military association with the Pentagon, is going to be the new Secretary of Defense in about 48 minutes from now. Now, Carol Simpson's down on the parade route just about where the President's car is. Carol, is the President talking to the people?
The President is still in the car, and to the great disappointment of all the people that are here. I've heard people say, I thought he was supposed to be the populist president, and they're a little disappointed that the windows weren't even rolled down. So I don't know. There were some concerns about security that may be dictating how much contact he has with the people.
Carol, we can see him in the car talking on a microphone. Now, he may be working for a rival network, I don't know, but is he talking to people, and can you hear a loudspeaker on the car?
You can barely hear it because there's a lot of noise, but it looks like he's just saying, hello, how you doing, that kind of thing. At least at our location, that's what he did.
You're at Freedom Plaza. You're halfway down Pennsylvania Avenue almost.
That's right. Here comes Senator Gore. He's locked up tight behind windows as well.
You know, it's possible that he's talking to the front of the car. You know, some of these automobiles, you don't think so? You think he's talking to the crowd?
No, I think he's talking to the crowd, or he thinks he's talking to the crowd. At any rate, we'll check it out and be right back.
Hi, may I take your order? Hello? How can I help you? Hello? Hello? Hello?
This week history is being made. Not here, but in the kitchen. This week, Ore-Ida introduces fast fries. So crispy, so delicious, you won't believe they came from your oven and not from a fast food place. Fast fries. They're that good.
Hello?
If you're ever in Spain, you can walk down any street and find hundreds of wonderful things to buy. From hand-tooled leather, to fragrant flowers, to the most beautiful hand-painted ceramics. But occasionally you'll need extra cash to buy them, so bring your Visa card. Because in Spain, not only do thousands more places welcome Visa, so do thousands more cash machines. And that's something American Express can't come close to. Visa, it's everywhere you want to be.
Because no other pain is like your headache pain.
What the hell, where it hurts?
Now there's new aspirin-free Bayer Select for headaches.
What the hell, where it hurts? With Bayer Select.
It contains a powerful aspirin-free pain reliever, plus a second ingredient, which together help relieve pounding headache pain. New Bayer Select for headaches, because all pain is not the same.
What the hell, where it hurts? With Bayer Select.
Grand Cherokee Limited. With an available 220 horsepower V8 and exclusive standard driver's side airbag, no other vehicle gives you so much latitude.
Great news that we're hosting TGIF this Friday. Yeah.
Oh, that's great, son. What's Friday?
Huh? Drop in on TGIF this Friday, starting with Family Matters. Then This Carpenter's Really Built.
Thanks.
Get an eyeful on Step by Step, then Baby Gets Potty Trained.
Hi there, Mr. Toilet.
You'll be flushed with laughter on Dinosaurs, and Brody dates a single mother.
Wow, when I was your age, I couldn't even have my own phone.
Camp Wilder on TGIF.
Friday. I like this concept.
You're ahead of your time, Dad.
Well, we're all sitting here saying it would be totally out of character if President Clinton didn't get out of his limousine and walk part way to the White House, and he paid attention and got out. And Britt Hume, you're closer to him than anybody.
He's right now at the corner of 15th and Pennsylvania Avenue, right there where the Treasury Department is, Peter. And what is striking, apart from the sight of him out the street and the excitement of the crowd, is that as we pass these blocks and look back up 14th Street, up 13th Street, and then down this peculiar little block of Pennsylvania Avenue before we came here, it is chock-a-block with people. I have never seen such a crowd in these streets.
Well, it's very refreshing, Britt, to see him get out of the car, I must say. Barbara Walters particularly was sitting here and saying, oh, wouldn't it be terrible and out of character, and how it would have seemed that things had changed so radically. But there he is. It's a beautiful day. No coats, right, Britt?
Peter, I rather suspect that he had to be dissuaded by the security people from going over and plunging himself into the crowd. I have never seen a public figure with a greater taste for that than Bill Clinton. He loves to do it. It seems to mean something to him personally. He seems to draw something from it. Rare is the end of an event, particularly at the end of a day when he has nowhere else to go, that this man does not plunge into the crowd and try, if he can, to touch every person in the room, along the street, wherever it is.
Well, this is a little bit of a repeat of a conversation we had earlier this morning as we see him out there, but Britt is absolutely correct, I think, from everybody who's covered him up close, that he derives energy from this. And to be cut off from this democratic contact with people by the Secret Service would be appalling.
What must he be feeling? We keep talking about it, but this dream since childhood. And by the way, we were talking earlier about the fashions and Hillary's disregard. You know, she doesn't want to be a fashion plate. Her press secretary had sent out exactly what she was wearing, a fuchsia dress. And she got up this morning, I guess, Mrs. Clinton, and said, I don't feel like wearing that fuchsia dress. So what? Does it matter what's put out? Like pink? She put on what she's comfortable in and what was good for a day where she might want to walk without a coat. She looks good.
What effect will this have on the fashion industry, Barbara? Will
Well, you know, the fashion industry, we sometimes make fun of it, but it's one of the biggest industries in this country.
Right?
And what this means is that there'll be a great many new designers we haven't heard of, like Sarah Phillips, who's only 37 years old, who made the dress that Mrs. Clinton's going to be wearing tonight. Yes, the established designers, the Bill Blass, the Oscar de la Rentas, the Stasi who designed for Mrs. Bush, they're still there. But this is a younger generation of names you don't know, less expensive in price. And they're going to have their chance too, just as we have a new and younger president and first lady. So it's good for the fashion industry. And it's American-made clothes and clothes that are comfortable. And that's about all I want to say about fashion for the moment, because if I go on much more, I'm going to start talking about socks the cat, and those are the two things I kept saying I wasn't going to dwell on today. But I know more about socks the cat than I think anyone wants to know.
Well, let's firstly remind people we're talking about a new generation. Bill Clinton is 46, and Hillary Rodham Clinton is 45. She used to be just Hillary Rodham, and then when that became of some political concern and difficulty to him as governor of Arkansas, she decided to become Hillary Rodham Clinton, HRC, it says in all the moving boxes that have come up from Little Rock to the White House. Barbara, they can't have brought everything with them from Little Rock. Do you know what they brought that was special?
Well, the beds, I understand, stay from White House to White House. Every president's wife has the opportunity, if she wants to redecorate, but she doesn't have to. One of the things that I think is interesting, Mrs. Bush was extremely nice to Mrs. Clinton, as she should have been, in showing her around, showing her even the laundry chute. Took time. Introduced Mrs. Clinton to everyone in the White House. The reason for this, and Mrs. Bush has said to friends, is that Mrs. Reagan did not do it with her. In all of the years that the Reagans were in the White House, the Bushes were never in the private quarters. And Mrs. Bush never really got to see the area until she actually came in as the First Lady. And in the 4 years that the Bushes were in the White House, they never had the Reagans to a state dinner. So although the ladies superficially expressed a friendship, there was not a great deal of affection. Mrs. Bush said this would not happen between her and Mrs. Clinton, and Mrs. Clinton knows everything she could know at this very brief period about the White House, where she'll live, what rooms she'll use, and where the laundry chute is.
Now, I have a question for you. It was put to me by the curator of the White House, who's in charge of the interior.
I hope it's about hookers. I'm very...
No.
I'm sorry, David. Go ahead.
He said, which First Lady do you think, in modern times, which one did the best job of redecorating?
Oh, that's Jackie Kennedy.
No, that's what everyone...
You're going to say Mrs.
No, I'm going to tell you what he said.
Oh, I
Pat
said
Nixon. Pat Nixon.
Isn't that interesting? You wouldn't expect it.
And this is the curator. He's been there a long time. He knows every foot of the building.
Well, I think Jackie Kennedy did the downstairs.
She did a lot.
Yeah.
Let's go down to 15th and Pennsylvania Avenue. Jeff Greenfield.
Well, President and Mrs. Clinton are smack in the middle of the street. He's without an overcoat, and he is looking very chipper. I guess this is what happens to Yale Law School graduates when they succeed in life. I'm standing here with a microphone, and he's the President of the United States. That's how it goes. But the crowd is, as you might expect, incredibly enthusiastic. The weather has turned even better than it was at the inaugural. It feels like spring, which, given the remarks in his inaugural address, maybe he has even more power than we thought as President of the United States. No overcoat, as you can see, no gloves. And he's just working one side of the street and the other. And I guess you could say he looks like a man who's, as the late Red Barber said, sitting in the catbird seat. It is as good-natured a crowd as you can imagine. They usually are on Inauguration Day. But a combination, I think, of the weather, and as you said, Peter, the fact that this is a staunchly Democratic town has got this crowd really, really in a terrific mood. I have not seen one negative sign. I'm sure there are some. I have not seen one incident. The police are being terrific. The Secret Service is being cooperative. It's just one of those days where perhaps 3 months from now, when he's locked in battle with the Congress, he'll look back and say, well, we got off to one heck of a start. Peter?
Thanks, Jeff. There haven't been many signs. We saw one a little while ago that said no new taxes, and when still Governor Clinton, or still President-elect Clinton, went to the interfaith service this morning, the anti-abortion forces were out in front of the African Methodist Church, and that is about all. And some people asked him not to mock God, but I think your characterization of the spirit of the day is absolutely precise. And just to pick up a little bit on what you said about the string, when President Clinton began his inaugural remarks, he said that we celebrate the mystery of American renewal, and that's what so many people who've been in town over the last several days have felt. He said that the inaugural ceremony was held in the depths of winter, but by the words we speak and the faces we show the world, we force the spring. And that may be the reference that Jeff is making to presidential influence.
He's in front of the White House now.
They will go into the White House to freshen up for just a few minutes. Then they will come out to the reviewing stand in front of the White House, and this gigantic inauguration parade will begin in earnest before them. Yes, ma'am.
I met yesterday Matt Flaherty, who's the new chief of staff. He said that at 12:01, the Clinton people manned the telephones and moved into the offices, and by 2:30, so it's after that time now here, he himself, the chief of staff, will be there. And you were talking this morning, and it was really very moving about this peaceful kind of transition. And here we have, just in the business of moving into the White House, in 1 minute, a whole new staff takes over. That's a difficult job.
Well, I don't want to make too much of it, but you know, I spent a lot of my adult life in countries where there was no democracy, or where democracy was being plucked from somebody at the end of the gun. And despite what we've said about the onerous qualities of the Secret Service today, I think that those of us who've seen it in other countries and seen what people in other countries endure at the hands of their government are trebly impressed by what we see today.
You know, and I was just talking about a little bit of the, perhaps a little discord between the former First Ladies, but I must also say that the First Ladies are always gracious to each other, the presidents are gracious to each other. If there are hard feelings, you never know it on this day.
Jeff Greenfield, before we lose you all together to your World News Tonight assignment, we've been talking a little bit about this new generation. I was reminded that Mrs. Clinton said that the cruelest thing said about her during the campaign is when somebody in an article referred to her as middle-aged. What are the other symbols of new age you see? Have we lost Jeff Greenfield?
Seemingly so.
Okay. Jeff Greenfield, in fact, has already left his position. The president went by. Jeff said, that's it, I'm going home.
Well, you know, one of the new age, the most popular ball tonight,
MTV.
The MTV ball, even Nelson Mandela asked to be able to come to it, and that's not...
All those guys behind the president are Secret Service agents whose job is very simple. If there's a bullet coming toward him, they step in front of it. It's so simple.
Peter and David, that Hillary Clinton has become as interesting and exciting as Madonna and the Princess of Wales. We haven't had a First Lady probably since Jacqueline Kennedy, who has aroused such, well, not controversy now, but in a way she's become a creature of such interest, much more than most First Ladies.
Those two women could be put into the same room?
I'm only talking about in terms of interest and the amount of conversation. There's hardly a newspaper that hasn't, or a magazine that hasn't devoted pages and pages to Hillary Clinton.
There's probably no one in the country at this point who does not know the influence she has on him. And I was thinking of his mother again, and all of the other family members and friends and relatives who are going to be in the reviewing stand. President Clinton did say the other day that one of the things that would surprise us was not so much the remarks about Hillary, but if we heard the way his mother still really spoke to him.
She loves to bet, evidently. She loves the horse races. Very outspoken woman. You know, to some degree, might remind one of the way we used to talk about Miss Lillian. You know, she's her own person.
Well, there's no doubt that the new First Lady is her own person. It's been made clear by the president. He said that she's going to be at his side intellectually, that she knows more about many of the subjects with which he must deal than others, and in many cases more than him. I can't think that I've ever seen a public relationship such as this which has appeared to be beset by its emotional or personal troubles, yet which seems so secure in terms of intellectual compatibility.
Not only that, she is the first lady to have her office, I hear, in the West Wing, in the same wing as the president, not in the East Wing. So she, even though she won't be on the same floor, she will be very close to him. And he still hasn't said, Diane Sawyer in her interview last week asked if she was going to sit in on cabinet meetings, and she said it depends on what my husband says, and he still hasn't said, so she may well be.
Sitting in the catbird seat, said Jeff Greenfield, and behind him to come, floats and bands and miniature horses and donkeys and enough
lawn chairs,
twirlers from every one of the 50 states to keep the president and the rest of us
imitators
amused.
There's an Elvis Presley float, if it's still going to be light enough for us to see it. You shake your head, David. You know how close President Clinton felt to Elvis Presley. He's a big fan.
Henry Graff, what do you think of all this? Our visitor from Columbia University.
Very exciting. As Barbara talked about the ages of these people, I was thinking that in the 18th century, the president who was inaugurated in 1793 was George Washington. That was his second inauguration. And he was 61 years old. In the 19th century, in 1893, Benjamin Harrison was inaugurated, and he was 60 years old. And here in 1993, we have a man who's 46 years old. We can say that history, at least with respect to the president's age, is on fast forward.
Well fought, Professor Graff.
People didn't live as long then as they do now.
That's true.
We have an 82-year-old Ronald Reagan, 80-year-old Richard Nixon. He said what keeps him young is he doesn't look back. By the way, President Reagan was not invited, at least his office said, that he was not invited to this inauguration. President Ford's office said he was, but he just doesn't do this sort of thing.
Well, we certainly did see President Carter earlier today, and it was he who put very solidly at the center of the agenda the challenge of transition, because he said he couldn't remember a time except when Franklin Roosevelt inherited the presidency, or I guess gave up the presidency in the middle of World War II, World War II, Harry Truman, such a dark and challenging period for a new president.
Sun is very low already. 3:30.
There are 125 different parade units. Is this going to run into the ball tonight? They'll be parading into that MTV ball?
It's going to run into the dark.
One gets the sense watching the president here, yes, as he goes over to Mrs. Clinton there, that all along the parade route here, as he has been walking, he's seen people who he knows in some fashion or another, who he's met along the way. You've probably seen on the news or read in the newspapers in the last couple of days that he brought 50 people to the inauguration with him who represented what he called faces of hope, people who all the way through the campaign had in some way inspired him, with whom he'd made a connection. At the interfaith service earlier this morning, which was one of the more splendid occasions that we've seen in a long time, with wonderful music and great preaching, it was said that President Clinton knew practically everybody there. Have you ever known a politician, David, to know so many people?
Well, Clinton, between here and the Capitol, I don't know how many people are out there, 500,000 or whatever it is. He seemed to know somebody every few feet, because he waved to them and made little familiar gestures, and so did she. And of course, a lot of people from Arkansas would be in those bleachers because they're able to get the tickets. But still, he seemed to know a tremendous number of people.
Well, he's back into the car now for the last short drive to the White House, we suspect. And then it won't be long before he and Mrs. Clinton and Chelsea, I didn't see out of the car. Did I miss Chelsea?
She was in there.
She stayed in the car. come to the inauguration reviewing stand
He's
to
going to
enjoy this parade. We'll be right
turn
back.
in and go in the White House back door.
From the nation's capital, ABC News' continuing coverage of Inauguration 93 will continue after this message. Coverage of the 52nd presidential inauguration. Once again, Barbara Walters, David Brinkley, and Peter Jennings.
Welcome back to our coverage of the inauguration. You're looking down at Pennsylvania Avenue. Write down the number. We'll make a call here. We just had a call, and we're going to make a confirmation call, Barbara, right?
Well, I was told by Mrs. Reagan that she and her husband had not been invited to the inauguration. This was when President Reagan was given the Medal of Freedom last week by President Bush. But Mrs. Reagan, who is obviously watching us, called to say, her husband's office called to say, no, indeed, they had been invited. So perhaps Mrs. Reagan just didn't know at the time, but she's been calling us. We're going to try to get her on the line.
Peter Jennings. Is Mrs. Reagan there?
Are we beginning to sound like a call-in show?
They do very well call-in shows. I know.
Let's call out.
By the way,
why don't we watch the parade for a second?
That was, by the way, the last, when President Bush gave President Reagan the Medal of Freedom. He was only the third president to receive it and the only living one, and it was quite a ceremony to see all
Reagan? Hi, it's Peter Jennings. How are you?
Do you want to fill us in?
Well, Barbara has just corrected it on the air. I was just going to take a second here and ask you what you think of the inauguration and the parade. Hang on, Mrs. Reagan, will you hang on one second? Barbara, maybe perhaps you better speak to Mrs. Reagan.
Oh, dear.
I'm going to put Barbara on Mrs. Reagan. Okay.
Well, in case anybody wonders whether this is a live program, this is a live program.
Let's go back to the parade while Barbara's getting things straightened out, because you can't hear Mrs. Reagan anyway, and I don't want to give to put her in the awkward position of putting her on the air without her knowledge. Here she is, there's Warren Christopher, and the new National Security Advisor for President Clinton, who is Tony Lake. They are already in the reviewing stand. Warren Christopher is or has not been confirmed. We believe he has just about to be officially confirmed as the Secretary of State, a man who takes on an enormous boatload of problems, as we've talked a couple of times today. And Tony Lake, who has had experience here in Washington before as a policy maker, worked for Foreign Policy magazine for a while as someone who influences foreign policy, who went up to be an academic and a gentleman farmer, has come back to be President Clinton's national security advisor. And Ann Compton is over in the White House grounds. While we finish this conversation with Clinton, there's Richard Gephardt, Congressman Gephardt and his wife. Ann, what's happening over there? Ann Compton, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, what's cooking over there?
I can hear you. Speak up just a little.
Well, I can tell you what I think Ann is trying to do. She's trying to get Mac McClarty, who is the president's chief of staff, his boyhood friend, wired up so we can all have a conversation with him, which will not be unusual in that Mac McClarty is not a total recluse by any means. But one of the things we noticed about the Clinton presidency, or the Clinton campaign and then the Clinton presidency in the transition, is how the men around him are devoted to him and are private men. There is Bruce Babbitt from Arizona, who is designated so far to be the Secretary of the Interior. Ann Compton, are you ready?
I can hear you. Thank you.
Ann Compton, are you ready?
Mr. McClarty, have you had a chance yet to get into your Chief of Staff office, and is this transition now going to turn into a working administration? Can you hit the ground running?
We are in our office. We're at our desk, and we're working this afternoon, and we're looking forward to getting to work on the people's business and moving this country forward.
But is the actual business of government an economic plan too much to ask in how many days from now?
Well, I don't think there's any specific timeline. The president has certainly been very much focused on this economy. As you well know, the economic conference focused on all those issues. Constructive meetings have taken place with his advisors, and we're very much focused on that issue, as you know.
Did the former chief of staff leave you a note in the drawer? Did the phones work? Is this going to be smooth?
Very gracious and orderly transition. Susan and Jim Baker are very gracious people, and we had a nice visit this morning. We had visited several times by telephone, so that part went very smoothly, as you would expect.
Mr. McClarty, can you hear me?
Peter, how are you today?
How are you, sir? Nice to see you. And
well,
congratulations on this. What's the first thing you did in the White House today?
Well, the first thing, Peter, was to get at our desk, get our people in place, to get a sense of organization and teamwork in order to serve the president and serve the people of this country.
Any couple of anxious moments there? Did you know where everything was?
Oh, I think it's a natural human reaction when you're moving into a new office. There are a few things that are not quite in the same place that you're accustomed to, but hopefully we can quickly overcome that. The honor of this opportunity to serve encourages you to get in place very, very quickly.
What's the first substantial thing that has been done, either by you or anybody else on the staff? You sent messages out to other world leaders?
Well, of course, the president has taken a number of initiatives, as you know, and this is the day where I think he has set the tone so well in his inaugural speech, and I think it spoke, it was vintage Bill Clinton. It was from both his heart as well as his head, and I think set the right tone. Now we've got a lot of work to do to get the organization in place to support the president, and we're hard at work doing that.
President Bush said he wanted all of his people to be out of their offices in the White House by noon today. Did they all make it?
They did. Jim Baker was most gracious in the transition. We had a nice visit this morning, and that part went very smoothly, which we're grateful for.
Are there some holdovers? Dick Cheney staying till 4 o'clock this afternoon, and National Security Aide John Howe staying for a few weeks?
There's some of those types of things, Ann, in place that were thoughtfully done and discussed and have gone very smoothly.
Did Bill Clinton write that speech himself?
Bill Clinton, as you know, writes most of his speeches, or at least has most of the input into them, and he worked on it, and I think he was very pleased with it.
George Stephanopoulos says he's going to come back and take a nap this afternoon. I don't believe that, do you?
Well, George was not resting when I saw him in the White House.
He says that President Clinton is going to take a nap.
Well, the president-elect, now the president, I think, is enjoying this crowd, visiting with everyone, and we'll see if that plan stays in place. He's really... I think feels a deep sense of commitment. This is a special day for him and his family. It's a special day for our country.
And tomorrow he'll greet the public in the White House?
That's as the plan stands. Well, I think that's the inclusion approach, the engaged presidency that Bill Clinton has talked about, and we're looking forward to tomorrow in that regard.
Average American?
That's right.
Annie, could I just ask one question?
Thank you, Ann.
Ann, he can't hear me, but would you ask him whether they're concerned about Zoe Baird's nomination as Attorney General? Are they absolutely think it's a sure thing now or not?
Peter Jennings is asking if you are concerned about Zoe Baird's nomination to be Attorney General.
Well, I think Zoe Baird has shown a considerable amount of poise and grace in this confirmation hearing. The confirmation hearing has examined the full issues on all of the conferees, and I think her nomination will go forward, and she'll be a splendid Attorney General.
Mac McClarty, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Ann Compton, for snagging the President's Chief of Staff for us. As we said, that is Zoe Baird, of course, and she admitted before the Senate Judiciary Committee yesterday that she and her husband had made a mistake in hiring undocumented, I think is the correct terminology, undocumented aliens to work for them. She said she was acting as a mother in getting help for her children. She's talking to Carol Browmer there, another of the President's senior appointees here. That reviewing stand in front of the White House is full of the new power group in town, or in the case of Colin Powell, the continuing power in town, because I think, David, he's got about another 19 months to go. I'm not sure he will go that long, but he is someone with whom Bill Clinton may actually wrestle on some questions of foreign policy.
Well, you would think Clinton, who may come to office with some kind of hostility, may not be a war, something going on in the Middle East, he will want advice from Powell, who's been through it all.
The reason
I would think so.
The reason I suggest that they may wrestle a bit is because Colin Powell has something of, as a reputation as a very cautious man, someone who argued quite vigorously, I'm told, on fairly reliable grounds about much that went on before Operation Desert Storm, who was not at all keen to flex America's muscles particularly aggressively in other parts of the world unless it's a sure thing, which you can understand. But Bill Clinton has given some hints that he's looking to be a little more activist in some regards, not least of which in the former Yugoslavia. We'll be back in just a minute to continue this celebration of Governor Clinton's inauguration as the 42nd President of the United States. of the most moving views of America, from the Lee Mansion at Arlington Cemetery, across the cemetery, across Memorial Bridge, there in the left-hand corner, the Lincoln Memorial, which was the point at which President-elect and Mrs. Clinton ended their journey from Monticello the other day, and then down along the Mall to the front north steps of the White House. The President and Mrs. Clinton on their way out to the reviewing stand, so this parade can finally get underway, and there is Chelsea. And as they go, Barbara Walters, tell us what the former First Lady Mrs. Reagan had to say.
All right, well, first of all, she said that to her knowledge, she and President Reagan had not been invited to the inauguration, but my feeling is that probably the President did receive it in his office, and maybe it just was not communicated to Mrs. Reagan, but Mrs. Reagan is not at all hurt about that, because they would not have planned to come. They're very comfortable where they are. Now then, Mrs. Reagan said that she did indeed show Mrs. Bush around, including the laundry room and so on, and that she would like it to be known that she certainly was very gracious and accommodating to Mrs. Bush. However, it is also true that she never was, the Reagans were never invited to a state dinner at the White House in the 4 years that the Bushes were there. So now you have both sides, and I think we can rest our case on that.
Let's leave that where it lies.
But why don't we? In the reviewing stand will be
walking out to it then.
Will be the family, brothers of Hillary, brother of Bill Clinton, the entire cabinet, and then what's described as close friends will be sitting in the back of the reviewing stand.
And, of course, he has now been in the White House, or the President's house, as President for the first time.
And the Gores and their 4 children.
They had lunch on Capitol Hill, so they've come back to the President's house, and he's not going to get into the reviewing stand until they're good and ready for him. So, Chelsea, if you wouldn't mind just standing outside the door.
Just wait outside, honey. We'll get to it.
How life changes in such a short period of time. And the parade gets underway with the Army Band playing ruffles and flourishes. Right at the end of World War II in 1946, stationed at Fort Meade in Maryland.
That hat is called a bearskin. I looked it up the other day.
It is?
And the smaller version of it is called a busby. Now, this is the most useless piece of information you will hear today.
Well, of course, it's another of these links between the United States and Great Britain. You see
It's British,
bearskin
right?
worn by all the household guards.
The British.
That's the United States Corps of Cadets, right in front of the President now, representing the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, representing the 4,000 men and women of the U.S. Military Academy, wearing their West Point gray uniforms, which date back to the early 1800s. is why the Corps of Cadets is referred to as the long, gray line.
By the way, outside of the military units, all of the people in the parade, they have come here at their own expenses. So many of them, with their own cities and towns, raise the money to send them here. Very proud of them all over the country.
Young people do that by selling donuts and washing cars and making a little money and kicking it into their kitty. And they pay their own way.
And there just to lead you in the blue uniform, the Old Guard, United States Infantry Old Guard.
All members of the military will be represented in the different units today, the 5 different units of the parade.
I'll tell you right now that we and the official announcer of the parade are going to confuse one another, and probably you as a result. Because I cannot tell you right off the top whether this is the United States Infantry Old Guard. It is not, because they're in blue, but I think it's the Arkansas Army National Guard. High School Super Band, the first civilians to pass the president. They've played at his inaugurations in Little Rock, Arkansas. They've played at his announcement rally. Boy, are they proud and happy people. Trudy McAdams, 17 years old, their lead drum major.
Maybe it's a flaw from my childhood, but I cannot listen to that march without thinking the monkey wrapped his tail around the flagpole, which is not the words.
This band is also supposed to be playing, and maybe they have earlier, the Arkansas Traveler. We're going to be hearing a lot of that, I think, in the next 4 years, and maybe I'm Just a Little Girl from Little Rock. Remember Carol Channing singing that, and Gentlemen Prefer Blondes? Well, it's going to be a big hit again, I think.
Well, I hope so.
Now, this is the Welcome Home America float, as you can see, just as clearly as we can. It welcomes home all Americans to the new national spirit, which is the theme of the inauguration. Representing Tennessee, home of the Vice President, Smith County's high school band from the very agricultural region that Vice President Gore comes from and calls home, based in Carthage. And the Jesse White tumbling team. Let me tell you what the inaugural parade said about them. Faster than the Chicago Bulls, more powerful than the Bears, and they can certainly leap over a tall building in a single bound. They come from Chicago's inner city. They perform for audiences around the world, the Jesse White Tumblers. Great source of pride for Chicago's Cabrini Green homes, and also for the entire city of Chicago. Performing for President Clinton. What a thrill. We'll be back. Parade coverage now, as you see it above Pennsylvania Avenue, the Corridor School Jugglers representing Oregon. This group from an elementary school in Oregon can apparently juggle anything from balls, clubs to butcher knives and flaming torches. The United States Department of Education, Oregon, and the Kennedy Center have all commended their work. And there's Ron Brown, who's the Commerce Secretary designate. We've seen quite a lot of him today. He claims a considerable measure of credit for the Clinton operation over the years, chairman of the Democratic Party. here's a great high school band, highest steppers I think we've seen in a long time. They're from Hine Junior High School. They represent the District of Columbia. It's one of the few junior high school bands ever to march in an inaugural play, and they can really step. Texas, where he and Mrs. Bush will now begin their post-presidential period. One is tempted to say retirement, but knowing President Bush, it'll be anything but retirement.
As of last week, Peter, he was still saying that he was still in the White House in his head, that Barbara Bush was out of it. He's building a new home, but that he, I guess at that point, he was still so involved with everything that he still felt very much in it, had not sunk in.
We now should get another good glimpse here of Senator Ben Nighthorse Campbell, who has come accompanied by fellow Native Americans. As you saw in the broadcast earlier, Senator Nighthorse Campbell is the first Native American senator elected since the late 1920s. That is a truly great Northern Cheyenne outfit he is wearing.
Those feathers we learned from him earlier are eagle feathers.
But as he very quickly and correctly said,
they don't kill eagles. They wait for them to fall out, and then they pick them up.
I'm curious to know whether Governor Clinton recognizes Senator Campbell under that. Let's see if we can get a glimpse here. He's sure having a good time.
Very easy to recognize. Pick out of a crowd.
Wasn't always dressed like that.
Did he take Tim Wirth's place?
Yes.
Tim Wirth.
Senator Wirth from Colorado, who thought he was going to get a job in the administration and has not, but I'm told now may get a job as an undersecretary for something called Global Affairs. He did get the job as Undersecretary of Global Affairs, which sounds at the very least challenging.
Tim Wirth decided not to run. He felt that the Senate was not a place that he wanted to be in anymore. He wasn't defeated. He decided not to run again.
He withdrew.
Representing the state of Maine, caning back onto Pennsylvania Avenue off 15th Street, the Nokomis Warrior Regional High School Band. It's the largest high school band in the state of Maine. A rural high school district where more than 25% of the high school students are involved in the music program. Not quite sure where it is precisely on the parade route we can pick up their music.
Represents a rural school district where more than 25% involved in the music program.
Good. You see, we in the official announcer have the same information.
This is the first time they've had official announcers up and down the parade route, isn't it?
No,
so that people
they've had
can
them
know
before, but somehow...
Did they? I don't remember it.
I don't remember hearing them so much as we are. And I think maybe they didn't have one this close to our booth here.
We will, before the day is over, from the National Park Service, get some estimate of the turnout there, but there is Vernon Jordan, who is the head of the transition, with Warren Christopher, who was the co-chairman of the transition. Warren Christopher in government, Vernon Jordan returning, to the best of my knowledge, going to stay in private law practice. Warren Christopher has now been confirmed as Secretary of State. Good luck to him, as one of the signs on the wall said about the challenge of this administration in general, given the problems it faces at home and overseas.
He was just confirmed this afternoon.
He was. President working the crowd in the inauguration stand there now, where all the members of his cabinet, or all the members to be of his cabinet, have gathered along with all his family members. Vice President Gore's larger family.
Maine is anywhere near Kennebunkport.
Well,
a name we won't be hearing that much about in the next few years.
There are about 10 little towns they had on the banner they were carrying. Across the top, you may be able to see it again.
As far as they're concerned, Neil Diamond's still very much in fashion. One-time governor of Arizona.
Candidate for president.
And just behind him there, talking to somebody else, the man who's going to be the trade representative for Bill Clinton, off to the right, Mickey Cantor, Richard Gebhardt, Bob Michael, the minority leader in the House of Representatives. And the house they are building, and they are making a lot of progress. They're preceded, I think, by the Homestead Senior High School Band, or either preceded or followed by them, which is kind of appropriate because they come from Homestead in Florida, which you all know suffered such terrible damage during the hurricane. They've managed to get this high school band together, but there is the home, this working together on America's future. There are about 10 carpenters and those kids, as we saw on this float earlier. They started building that house when they were on Capitol Hill, and they look pretty darn near finished by the time they get in front of the White House.
Jimmy Carter could jump out and help them. He's been building quite a few houses to his great credit.
Well, they've done this.
Time doing that.
They've done this in 2 hours, Barbara, and I bet there's nobody in America who believes they've ever had work done like this in 2 hours.
Some of it was already done.
Here's the Homestead High School Band from Homestead, Florida. You can see they were sponsored by the Dade County Public Schools with special thanks to their friends and supporters. They have had a lot of support down there at Homestead. That's the site of, if you remember, the Air Force Base that was so devastated in the hurricane. And the President wants to stand up to them. Any reporters visited that part of Florida knows that Hurricane Andrew devastated everything but the spirit. And all over that part of Florida today, the building goes on apace, but many people in other parts of the country would truly be surprised to see how much work there is yet to be done in order to bring that part of the country back to anything resembling what it was before. President Bush committed to rebuild Homestead Air Force Base, but I'm not absolutely certain, David, that President Clinton is going to continue the commitment.
Well, it was about to be abandoned. Congress may not put up the money to restore it.
52 of the 55 people in this band had their homes damaged, as did the director of the music.
Well, the town is just about blown away.
This is the young son of Senator Gore, who was almost a miracle child, who was in an automobile accident about 3 years ago, run over by a car when he was with his father at a game, and Senator Gore all but left the Senate that year to stay by this child's bedside, and he is now, as you can see, a handsome and very well young boy, but it was a very tragic experience for the family.
He doesn't quite know what he thinks about the Reese miniature horses representing Delaware. These little horses, they, in case you have, well, I guess everybody's seen a miniature horse, at least on television. They are these perfect little replicas. They're all under 34 inches tall. There's a lot of interest in them around the country. There's a lot of competitions for them. And there's one that sort of has half his winter coat on and looks weird.
You don't see many fur coats today by the people watching the parade. Remember in Reagan's, all those fur coats? And I remember we talked to someone who said, well, it's a sign of the prosperity under the Reagans that we all have our mink coats. Not a lot of mink coats in these stands today.
Well, they have been around town a lot, and I'll bet you see a lot tonight at the inaugural balls, even though some think it inappropriate.
Well, they were not at the Save the Animals ball last night.
The Pride of Connecticut from the University of Connecticut, representing the state of Connecticut. I must say, David, those of us who come from other parts of the country are surprised to see fur coats. Those of us who live in New York, you don't see very much of them anymore. It is not politically correct to wear a fur coat these days. And if you wear one, you are quite likely to be accosted in public by someone who takes exception.
And sprayed.
Well, so it is said. Do you know that that has ever actually happened?
No, I hear. One hears, but I believe what I read.
Well, it depends on where you read it.
This parade is broken into 5 different sections, and that University of Connecticut band representing the state brings up the tail end of the so-called first division, which represents, or was intended to represent, family in the home. And we move on to Division 2, which is intended to represent dreams and the future. And with no offense whatsoever to the University of Connecticut band, you're now about to hear the Marine Corps band.
Go back, change into evening clothes, Mrs. Clinton wearing her first made-to-order couture dress, and then 11 balls if they show up at all of them, and the MTV ball, a music ball, or more of a music ball, where President Clinton may play the saxophone. He's got a long night ahead, an exciting morning, and then down to business.
Well, seeing India Company, the 3rd Marine Battalion, reminds us, of course, that American servicemen and women are serving all around in various parts of the world this evening, back in the Persian Gulf, of course, and in Somalia. Some of them returning home after having been away from Christmas. We'll have a chance, perhaps, if they arrive in time, to see a little bit of this parade, those coming back from Somalia. So our stations around the country, we're going to continue our coverage until 4:30 Eastern Time. So we'll be back in just a minute for a little more coverage of this inauguration parade for the 42nd President, Bill Clinton. It is going to be quite a while before everybody gets down Pennsylvania Avenue. There it is with the shadows beginning to lengthen, though the days are certainly getting longer now. Back towards the Capitol. The President has made this journey today, and so has the 1st division of a 5-division parade. I think we said earlier this was going to be bigger, larger, some would argue even more extensive than previous inaugurations. Some observations as they watch it from our 2 historians, Henry Graff and Alan Brinkley, both from Columbia University. Professor Graff?
Peter, the President talked about the mystery of renewal. What we've been watching is the rite of renewal, R-I-T-E. And here we are in the middle of a parade, and we recognize that we're at the beginning of new time. That's what the rite of renewal produces. If Clinton succeeds famously, and we don't know what lies ahead. Kennedy once said, to judge a president, you have to know what he had going for him. We don't know yet what Clinton has going for him. But if he succeeds, this will be known as the beginning of the Clinton era, or the Clinton time, the way we talk about the age of Franklin Roosevelt, or the age of Theodore Roosevelt. And if he's less successful, then he will be merely the 42nd President of the United States.
One thing he has going for him at the moment is the Florida A&M University Marching 100. You caught a glimpse of going through there. Sports Illustrated's best marching band for 1992. And now here's Bill Williams and his mountain men representing Arizona. They are in their 5th inaugural parade in 40 years. If they look familiar to you, they've aged a little, grown a few beards. They've ridden for Kennedy, Johnson. They rode twice for Ronald Reagan. They're ambassadors from Arizona, so named by Governor Symington. Reminding some of those of us who watch, as Henry Graff was just alluding to a moment ago about passage, reminding the country of its history. Alan Brinkley.
Well, this is an enormous inauguration. I assume the largest in history, but it's not unlike a lot of other Democratic Party inaugurations. Democrats are accustomed to long periods out of power, not just in recent times, but throughout the century. And when they come back, particularly after long periods in the wilderness, they tend to turn out in enormous numbers. Woodrow Wilson's inauguration in 1912, after, 16 years of the Democrats being out of power, attracted enormous crowds to Washington. Franklin Roosevelt in 1932, enormous crowds. John Kennedy in 1960, after 8 years, enormous crowds. So this is actually quite characteristic of what the Democratic Party does when it returns from its frequent periods out of office.
Well, especially for the children, some of the characters from the public broadcasting system. Thomas the Tank. I know Big Bird is in there somewhere, and Barney, and I believe
Cookie Monster is also there.
That's Barney, up on top there. Purple Dinosaur with his own television show, and boy, is he popular. I mean, Big Bird is an institution, but Barney is a rage.
Your children watch Barney. That's why, you know, it's not that you sit down every day and watch Barney, do you, Peter?
How do you know that? And there's Ernie, Bert and Ernie are over there as well. The great thing about these characters, and everybody in America knows, is that they have taught so many other kids and not a few adults in English and a lot of other languages about the ups and downs of life and friendship. And the thing about Bert and Ernie is that friendship always endures. And these characters from PBS, the Children's Television Workshop, go on and on educating children. And if there is any passion that Bill Clinton has had since he was governor of Arkansas, as he stands there with the Secretary of State, it is the passion he and his wife share for education. Now, the federal government doesn't do a great deal for education, but presidential leadership is essential. George Bush often referred to himself as the education president. He and Bill Clinton met at Charlottesville in Virginia some years ago for the Great Education Summit. Bill Clinton has his work cut out for him in this field.
Those wonderful characters that you talked about, the Muppets, the creation of Jim Henson, who died in the last 4 years, but his characters live on and are shown throughout the world.
And here's somebody having a whole new lease on life on television, which is fabulous. That's Sherry Lewis.
Well, what is that?
That's lamb chop, for goodness sakes, David.
She's a ventriloquist, and she does it with a hand puppet. She was on when my grown-up daughter was a little girl, and she's had a wonderful career.
Our boss, Rune Arledge, was her first producer. No further comment required.
Well, nobody made any.
That's why she endures today.
Now, this is interesting. Is Warren Christopher talking to Governor Clinton about an issue that has come up already on his watch? It looks like it. Maybe we can invest in a phone call over to the State Department next week and see what's going on over there.
The director of Lincoln, Dr. Odell Nails, died last week in a car accident.
Representing the state of Michigan, the 00 Riders Association. Not what one might normally most readily associate with Michigan, but this equestrian unit is a volunteer organization. They sponsor a lot of programs to expose inner city and disadvantaged kids to horses and to the many aspects of pleasure you get from riding a horse.
Peter, the lead horse, as you can see, is without a rider, and that is because the head of the 00, Dr. Odell Nails, tragically died just last week in a car accident. And this is in his tribute that the lead horse is riderless. By the way, one of the young people riding today, his niece, Heather Vincent, is an ABC field producer. Took the day off to ride in this parade.
Well, the two of them may be settling somebody's hash, Peter. I don't know who's...
Well, I don't know precisely what's going on, and we'll do our best to try to find out for you. But there have been a number of symbols throughout the day which make it very clear this president has inherited the watch, or won the watch in the election, to be fair to him, at a very difficult time in the country's history. Challenges abroad which he didn't imagine, an economic challenge at home, the proportions of which he has been emphasizing since he realized, if he did realize, or didn't know beforehand, that they were bigger than they'd anticipated. Got a couple minutes left. Barbara, you got some closing thoughts about this day?
Well, I think following up on what you were saying, the president has so much that he has to do. If he makes the changes that he promised, there are going to be a lot of people having to make sacrifices, a lot of unhappy people. If he doesn't make the changes, he won't be probably as successful a president as he should be, because there's so much to be done. But one thing he does have, which he talked about this morning, right now, is the support of the people and the great hope, which has been the password of this campaign inauguration.
I have a quick word of advice for those going to the inaugural balls. Eat first. Leave your coat in the car, and be prepared for what we now call limo lock. A traffic jam entirely of Cadillacs and Lincolns. It will take forever to get where you're going. You may never get there.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but the last quote, John Quincy Adams, who said of the Madison inauguration ball, the crowd was excessive, the heat was oppressive, and the entertainment was bad.
Nothing has changed.
No, Barbara, it's been nice having you with us. Again, this is the second inauguration that we've had you with us for the parade, and that's a great pleasure for us. David, this is, as we were observing earlier, being a couple of sentimental characters that we are, this is the end of the 92 vote for us.
Absolutely. It goes all the way back to New Hampshire in January.
Exactly, and we have had a wonderful time, and we had 20 seconds, and the 42nd president has a lot on his plate, as Barbara and everybody else clearly knows. We've checked at the Pentagon and the State Department. There isn't anything going on of a crisis nature at the moment, but that doesn't mean there is any crisis in the world. We'll begin dealing with it in detail on World News tonight, and then later again this evening on Nightline. We hope you've enjoyed the day and the coverage, but much more importantly, the day. Until World News tonight, I'm Peter Jennings. Thank you for being with us.
The Guernsey Ball. This administration has got rhythm. Now here's Katie Couric with someone else who is a relatively big star performing here.
We are now joined by an entertainer who needs no introduction whatsoever, Barbara Streisand. Good evening. Great to see you.
Right.
I know, I've been instructed.
I was watching NBC before. Tom Brokaw, he called me Barbara Streisand. Some people call me Barbara Streisand, and it's S-A-N-D, like sand on the beach. Streisand.
Well, good.
So for all of you watching, Streisand. Thank you.
I'm so glad I got it right, Barbara. Tell me, why the Arkansas ball? Why did you come by this particular ball?
Because I think President Clinton is coming here.
A lot of people from Hollywood go to the California ball, but this is the hot ticket this year. I mean, a lot of people want to be here, don't they?
Well, yeah. Cool.
Are you going to be going to other balls in addition to this one, or?
Probably not. I just wanted to sort of check out the scene, you know, and it's not like what I expected. You know, when you saw President Kennedy and Jacqueline Kennedy, it was in a big hallway. I don't know. It's not what I imagined.
You didn't expect wall-to-wall carpeting and big drapes around the walls? Why was it so important for you and so many other people in Hollywood to attend this inauguration?
I mean, me and people like me have been very dissatisfied with the government for the last 12 years. And I feel that people can really make a difference, you know, so my foundation has supported a lot of get out the vote, the women's vote. After all, we're 52% of the population and we're not represented in government. And I think people really realize that they can make a difference, that one vote counts, you know. So we felt empowered, and people of color and Jewish people and women, and we elected this man. I mean, he is of the people. We chose him.
I have to ask you about the presidential gala you sang at the Capitol Center. You've given, what, 4 live performances in the last 20 years. You're very nervous about singing live. Were you terrified to sing in front of that many people? You seem so at ease.
I did it the night before for the people who came for free. They just had to bring a bag of groceries for the homeless, which I thought was lovely. Yeah, I haven't sung for 18,000 people since McGovern in 1972. But I must say, the people are wonderful. They're yelling out things from the stands. You know, Barbie, you're like butter. And it was very, very nice to feel them, you know. And I feel so celebratory. I'm so excited and thrilled that we have this new and vibrant young leadership that this country really needs. That, you know, I wanted to feel part of history.
Barbara Streisand, thank you very much. Streisand. I said it correctly, and
Streisand, everybody.
We're going to explain that to Tom.
Thank you.
Message received, Barbara Streisand. And now on stage at the Arkansas Ball not so long ago, Kenny Loggins. And we're back here at the Arkansas Ball right now with someone else who has been a longtime supporter of Democratic presidential candidates, Lauren Bacall, who is kind of my co-pilot with her headgear on here tonight. We hate to do that to you, but we couldn't hear each other.
I'm so glad I fixed my hair, thanks.
Yeah, well, we'll send us the bill. But on the other hand, don't. Look, we can't pretend that we don't know each other, so I'm just going to go ahead and call you Betty if that's okay.
That's okay, honey.
You were a big fan of Adlai Stevenson. You campaigned hard for John F. Kennedy. Where does Bill Clinton fit in all that for you?
Well, for me, I think the last 12 years have been a nightmare. I feel, personally. I think that there's been a lot of destructive stuff done, and the arts have certainly been neglected badly. And I've found it a very disappointing and very disenchanting time. And I felt not very good about the country, actually. And I feel that Clinton and Gore together have a quality, aside from youth, which I'm so thrilled to see two young guys. I think it's so exciting. And the fact that they also are, they're looking forward to the next century, and they are aware of today's problems, of the earth problems, of the homeless problems, of health care, and they're going to deal with that. And I have tremendous hope. I must say, I haven't been this excited in years.
Betty, what do you think that they can do for the arts? What needs to be done in your judgment in this country? Just more freedom?
I think freedom, certainly from censorship, and I also think that they need to be supported. A lot of the endowments have been cut badly. If there are lots of things that people don't like in painting, in motion pictures, and television, whatever. But some people are not going to like everything, and some people, people do not enjoy the same thing. They don't appreciate the same kind of art. And my feeling is that what Jesse Helms likes, I don't think should be the rule of thumb in the art world.
Let me conclude by asking you about the loss of a great artist today.
Oh, terrible.
Audrey Hepburn.
So sad. Awful. I heard it on the 6 o'clock news when I was getting ready to come here, and I must say, it's terrible. It's just awful. It's a nightmare. That disease is a nightmare. It's relentless. She was young, and she left a great legacy behind. She certainly personally, I think, had a great many rewards and was very much appreciated in the motion picture business, and I think that she enjoyed it. And it's just another one gone. Awful.
Lauren Bacall, thanks so much for coming by tonight. I know that you probably will give us the headset right back.
I will.
I don't think it'll go into the permanent collection. We're going to go now to the New England Ball just across town here, and someone who has been a riveting artist throughout all of this is Aretha Franklin, standing by right now. And have you been able to sing tonight, Aretha, yet or not? Can you hear me? Well, you see, Betty, that's why we put on the headset. Can you hear me now?
Hi.
Aretha Franklin?
Good evening.
Hi, have you been able to perform yet tonight? Whoops. Can you hear me now?
You're so loud, he said.
Can you hear me now?
Okay.
Have you been able to perform yet tonight, Aretha? No. All right, I'm sorry. We're going to try to get that fixed because we always want to hear Aretha Franklin. She's someone that we don't want to keep silent. We'll be back with more on Inauguration Night 1993 right after this.
Kennedy Center, where the Western Ball is being held. Bill Clinton and his wife Hillary are making the rounds. Listen to what they have to say to this crowd.
It took a long time to kind of work itself through, but it turned out to be a pretty good decision. And I want you to know how very grateful we are for what you did for our campaign and to give us a chance to work with you to change this country. We'll never forget that. And we won't let you down. We'll work hard beginning tomorrow to be faithful to the trust that you put in us. Now, enough of this comical stuff. Let's get
all right, while Bill Clinton is talking, Al Gore is cutting the rug.
That's right. At every ball that he goes to tonight. Al and Tipper Gore are dancing. Tipper, of course, caused some controversy in music circles when she said that there ought to be some kind of a notation on record albums with explicit lyrics.
A lot of people were afraid she was really suggesting censorship.
Trying to shut them down. That was not the case at all. She was the mother of 4 children, and a lot of the rock and roll lyrics are more explicit than parents would like to have their children find out kind of at first blush. When Bill Clinton was thanking the western states, he did so with good reason, because the western part of the United States has become an important cornerstone for the election of this Democratic president, and he wants to hang on to them 4 years from now.
Well, Tom, time now for another check to see what those young people are up to at the MTV ball. I figure if Maria Shriver is at the MTV ball, well, we're at the VH1 ball. But, Maria, I understand that you have a special guest with you.
Yes, my runner this evening is none other than Chevy Chase. And actually, Katie, he is in the unique position because he has spoken to not only Bill Clinton, but George Bush, both in the last 24 hours. And what did both of these presidents and ex-presidents have to say?
Not in the last 24 hours. I spoke to...
You told me that, okay, in the last 48 hours.
You said that to me, and now you're in a precarious position.
Okay, what, you talked to them recently.
I spoke to President Bush on Sunday night. He was at Camp David, sitting by the fire with Barbara, with his finger on a button, I imagine. And he was in a kind of a down mood.
And were you able to cheer him up?
And I was, a little bit. It was a nice call, and I had a kind of a relationship with George over the years.
And we're now taking a look at the Clintons dancing at the Western Ball. And what was your conversation with Bill Clinton, President Bill Clinton, like?
The president hugged me last night after this gala affair on another network. And he said, remember what I told you back in 88, back in 89? You remember the speech he gave at the convention and how long it was? Well, that's how we became friends. I was the only guy who liked the speech. And ever since then, we've been friends. And he hugged me, and then he turned around and came back and hugged me again and asked me why I didn't sing People. So I knew that he had seen too many celebrities.
Okay, Chevy Chase here at the MTV ball, adding an element of coolness to the ball. Also, I have to say, adding a big element of coolness was Roger Clinton, the president's brother, who is a very good musician, and he performed here this evening, and this is what he sounded like. Michael Bolton told me on Sunday that President Clinton referred to himself as the frustrated musician in the family. Here is the successful musician in the family. What did this performance mean to you?
It meant everything. It meant the culmination of 18 years of performing and chasing that elusive dream, that proverbial dotted line for the record deal.
What difference do you think it's going to make in your career as a musician now that your brother is president of the United States?
Well, you know, I'm not sure exactly. I'm sure there'll be little bits and pieces it'll help, certainly. But I'm in that proverbial door now, and like Ahmed Ermigan said from Atlantic Records, he said, doesn't matter who his brother is, once he's here, if he can't produce, he's not going to be here. So it'll open a few doors here, but I think the respect that I earned tonight is what's going to help me more than anything else.
Now, I had a chance to see you as you're walking into the reviewing stand today, and I threw a couple questions, and you said, well, I'm not talking to the press, so I appreciate you coming by. But what did that mean to you today when you saw your brother take the oath of office, become president of the United States?
It meant as much to me, maybe even a little more than tonight did as far as my career. I have a tendency to put my mother and my brother up on pedestals, and so consequently I'm not quite up there a lot of times in my own mind. Today, watching my brother from the side, see, I went up and kissed him when we left the parade, and I said, you know, I love you so much, and I said, there's no way to know what's going on inside your heart. But he and I have huge hearts, and we got them from our mother, and I can only imagine that it's just, it means everything to him, but it's also got a special meaning because Mother's still here, and she's the reason that we've been allowed to attain our lifelong dreams, and it's just it's a great feeling. I love my brother, and he's so deserving. He's just a great leader.
Well, Roger Clinton, thank you very much. And that's a good son. There are two good sons for Virginia Kelly. He credited his mom for getting him here and for getting his brother to the presidency. Back to you, Tom and Katie.
Thank you very much, Maria. That was a very touching commentary indeed on the part of Roger Clinton, because the three of them, Virginia Kelly and Bill Clinton and Roger Clinton, when unfortunately Mrs. Kelly was married to a man who was a good stepfather but an alcoholic and sometimes violent, and the three of them had to stand together, and we can never know for sure just how much it shaped their lives and how much it brought them together. But we had, I think, a little peek at that tonight.
And it was nice to see, Tom, how President Clinton walked over to Virginia Kelly at this ball and embraced her and spent a lot of time talking with her.
That's right, and she has not changed at all. She still likes to play the ponies, and she's got a favorite in the Super Bowl. And
the Bills, unfortunately.
Yeah, she's going to have a good time, and so are we. We'll be back right after the station break.
You know, this is a real Cinderella story. About 2 weeks ago, no one had really ever heard of Sarah Phillips, and now everyone knows who she is, and if they don't, well, they'll be learning about her soon. That's because Sarah Phillips is the designer of Hillary Clinton's inaugural gown. Sarah, great to see you.
Thank you.
You're 37 years old.
Yes.
You've been designing your own line for just a year, 3 seasons.
Right.
How in the world did you land this gig?
Well, she had bought my suit for the Democratic National Convention in Little Rock, Arkansas, through Michelle Rivera, who's the buyer there, had introduced her to my collection, and she bought it off the rack and wore it the night of the acceptance speech. And
were you stunned when you heard she wanted to buy one of your gowns for the big night?
Oh, well, I was flabbergasted, to say the least.
Tell me a little bit about the gown, Sarah. We're going to be looking at some pictures, and tell me what it's made of and why you designed it the way you did.
First of all, it was executed by Barbara Matera from Barbara Matera Limited, who does all of the Broadway shows and all of the opera costumes and ballet, and her whole staff, which I want to thank from the bottom of my heart, because I could not have done it without them. And Barbara she was recorded for the show tomorrow.
Tell me a little bit about what the gown's made of. Give me some designer info.
It's a Alençon lace, beaded and worked with crystals and beads and re-embroidered, and then it has an overskirt of silk mousseline, iridescent mousseline, that is all beaded with a wisteria pattern.
Now, you've gotten a lot of publicity, Sarah, as a result of this gown. How has it changed your life? I mean, is the phone ringing off the hook?
Yes, because our work telephone is our loft telephone where we live, and we can't use the phone subsequently because of the call waiting. We just get beep, beep, beep.
Well, everyone should have such problems, right? Sarah Phillips, congratulations on the gown. Thanks so much for stopping by to tell us all about it.
Thank you very much, Katie.
And speaking of well-dressed individuals, our own Stone Phillips is at the Tennessee Ball with 2 very special guests. Hi, Stone.
That I am, Katie. I am here with 2 people who can probably lay claim to the distinction of being the proudest parents in all of Washington, D.C. this evening. I'm talking about the parents of Vice President Al Gore, Senator Al Gore Sr. and his wife, Pauline Gore. Congratulations, a big night for your family. It must be a thrilling night for you tonight.
Yeah, are you on now?
We are on live, sir, yes.
Yes, this is a great night. So many Tennesseans here, I can't even guess how many.
Mrs. Gore, can you tell us what your thoughts and emotions were this morning as your son was being sworn in as Vice President of the United States?
Well, I was very happy to see him achieve something that he had worked for.
Did you ever think this day would come?
Well, I didn't think much about it. I've just watched him work. I'll I'll tell you, I can't hear a word you're saying. I can't hear anything but the music here, but I am very, very happy for that. My son has been sworn in as vice president, and I want him to achieve everything for the country that he possibly can. I'm also proud of the president, both Hillary and Tipper, and I know they're all going to do a great job.
Senator Gore, let me ask you, when your son was tapped for the ticket this summer, you were not surprised. You said that your son had been raised for this. How so?
Oh, I suppose every father, at least many of them, who look in the cradle and see a baby boy, thinks he might have a chance of being president, and I want to keep that hope alive. And now it can be a girl baby just as well as a boy baby.
Well, but that only means that we were raising him to do anything that came, any opportunity that came along, and to do a good job of everything that he undertook. Not just to be president, but just to be anything, to do something in life.
Well, he's got a big opportunity and a lot of challenge ahead of him. A great night for you and your family. Thanks for joining us this evening. Thank you. Tom, back to you.
Thank you, Stone Phillips. That's Senator and Mrs. Gore, of course. They had what in effect was a kind of training school for Al Gore. They were very prominent here in Washington. He grew up with all manner of dignitaries and important and powerful politicians coming to his home when he was a young man growing up in the nation's capital, went on to serve the Congress and then the Senate, now Vice President of the United States. Here at the Arkansas Ball not too long ago, former member of the Doobie Brothers, Michael McDonald, was on stage performing. Here is some of that. Ball at the Armory. I can't remember a night when there was so much Hot 100 music all in one city at one time. You can get almost anything you want, from the 50s to the 60s to the 70s, the 80s, and certainly the 90s. Someone who has transcended a couple of those decades at least, another child of the 60s, is with us tonight, getting ready to perform here at the Arkansas Ball in just a few moments, Judy Collins. And when you sang Chelsea Morning, what, 20 years ago now, I guess, Bill Clinton heard it and later named his daughter Chelsea.
He did. He named his daughter Chelsea and came to see me in concert about a year and a half ago and came backstage and told me how much he loved my music. Both he and Hillary were there. And then I began to read that he was the kind of a fan who knew exactly the names of all the songs on all the records and had all of them. And it's been a remarkable discovery to find a fan like Bill Clinton.
Think back when you first began to hit it big in the 60s with your music, and of course you were part of the generation, the counterculture. Did you think then that a member of your generation would one day inherit the power of the White House?
Well, I think we were all concerned in trying to shape what was happening. And I don't think you think so much of your peers. Of course, Kennedy had been a young man, and I sang for Kennedy here in Washington, and I certainly thought about his legacy that was unfulfilled for many, many years. And I've been in Washington so many times doing things to try to get the White House to kind of come around on many different issues, and to the country to raise the consciousness that today when I sat at the inauguration and heard those words and heard Maya Angelou's poetry and looked behind me at this incredible vista of people celebrating change and celebrating chance, I was in tears and I was overjoyed, and I'm so thrilled to be a part of this.
We don't want to keep you here too long because we know you're going on stage to sing Chelsea Morning and
Yes,
Amazing
I
Grace.
am.
And right now we're going to go to the MTV Ball, where we have an unusual appearance tonight by Michael Steve. of REM. He almost never appears in public.
Michael Stipe and Natalie Merchant of 10,000 Maniacs. Tom, I'm trying to clue you into this.
I got to confess, I'm sailing through a lot of uncharted waters here tonight. Judy Collins, That's My Generation. There is an Andrea Brokaw over there at the MTV Ball who's hanging her head in shame that I don't know all this right now.
Well, it's kind of ironic that
Right.
these two artists are singing To Sir with Love, which
Right.
was sung by Lulu, right? I
Right.
think in the
A long time ago.
1960s or
Right.
somebody like that. You probably remember her. Well, you know, not everybody who's anybody is here tonight, Tom. Some of official Washington is actually staying home, including writer and former Washington Post reporter Sally Quinn. As you can see, Sally is resting comfortably and looks very happy to be in her living room next to a roaring fire. Sally, what's the deal? Why aren't you here?
Eat your hearts out, Tom and Katie. Why, you know why I'm not there? All you have to do is look around and see. You can't hear yourself think. You're uncomfortable. You're jammed in. You can't get a drink. You can't get anything to eat. You can't find your limo if you have a limo. If you were dumb enough to get a limo, if you didn't have one, then you're going to have to walk all the way home. You better have on boots instead of high-heel shoes because your feet will get destroyed. And I hope people there aren't wearing any clothes they care about because they'll end up torn and ripped and cigarette burns. Don't try to
check your coat, right?
Don't try to check your coat because you'll get it out probably in about 3 months, and you'll be lucky if you don't get knocked down and trampled.
Sally, what a party pooper. Are you trying to tell us these balls are just overrated?
Yeah, but you see, I've been to many of these balls. When I was a reporter, I had to do it, and I was the pool reporter for Jimmy Carter and Roseland. 16 years ago, I went to every single ball with them, and I escaped with my life, and I vowed that if I got out of there in one piece, I'd never, ever go to a ball again. And I think most people in Washington who have had the experience of going to an inaugural ball know what the truth is. I think if anybody's on their way to one right now in a limo and has a TV in their limo, I would just advise them to stay there instead of circle the block.
Warning, warning, warning. Well, Sally Quinn.
Keep the fire going, and the drinks code will come by later, Sally.
Cheers. I'll be thinking of you.
Good to see you, Sally, and we'll be back to wrap things up from here right after this.
These are the four tops at the American Ball.
All right, Tom.
Hey, how
You're
about
a regular
that?
Casey Kasem.
You know. All right, well, we're back at the end of an extraordinary day here in Washington, D.C., and the symbolism of this evening should not be lost on the country because it is a statement about a new generation taking power here in Washington and reaching out to ever younger generations, trying to get them involved in public service and in public life. And I think that is an important statement tonight. Tonight's a good time. Tomorrow morning, the reality, however, for Bill Clinton and Al Gore.
But what a day it's been, Tom. I had such a great vantage point during the swearing-in ceremony. I've really never experienced anything like it. And then to be able to lead the presidential limousine down Pennsylvania Avenue, I was standing in a flatbed truck. I wasn't exactly in a great place, but it was just incredible to see the crowds. I've never seen such an incredible throng of enthusiastic supporters. So he's starting off
And we all learned something here tonight. Until tonight, I thought 10,000 Maniacs were Buffalo fans in the end zone when they made that great comeback against Houston. But it turns out not to be the case at all. Well, on behalf of Katie Couric and Maria Shriver, who's at the MTV Ball, and Stone Phillips tonight, the Tennessee Ball, thanks very much for joining us as we were your ticket to these inaugural balls. A reminder, Katie back tomorrow morning on Today, and I'll see you tomorrow night on NBC Nightly News. Thanks for joining us, and rock on, everyone.
Wood, the latest on the natural gas explosion that destroyed a home in Warwick, and a tanker truck accident shuts down part of Route 95. Details next on Newswatch 10's Night Team.
This is our time. Let us embrace it.
The rock cries out to us today, you may stand upon me, but do not hide your face.